and welcome to another journey through the world of One Piece. Tonight, we turn our attention to a figure who defies every expectation, a man whose very existence seems to mock the natural order of power and prestige. Tonight, we explore the complete story of Buggy the Clown, a pirate whose legend was built not on overwhelming strength, but on something far more peculiar and far more fascinating. Let your breathing slow. Allow your thoughts to drift like ships on a calm sea. And let us begin with a man who stumbled his way into greatness, one absurd moment at a time. In the vast ocean of One Piece, where power is typically measured in earth-shattering blows and conquering haki, there exists an anomaly. A clown-faced pirate with a bright red nose, garish makeup, and a devil fruit ability that should have made him a footnote in history. Yet somehow, impossibly, Buggy the Clown stands among the 4 emperors of the sea. He holds the same title as Shanks, the red-haired legend who could stop wars with his presence. The same rank as Blackbeard, who killed Whitebeard and stole his power. The same status as Monkey D. Luffy, who toppled 2 emperors and awakened a mythical fruit that had eluded the world government for centuries. How did this happen? How did a man who was defeated by Luffy at the very beginning of his journey in a small East Blue town rise to become one of the 4 most feared pirates in the world? The answer is as complex as it is absurd. A tale woven from luck, timing, reputation, and the strange magnetism that draws powerful people into Buggy's orbit against all reason. His current bounty sits at 3,189,000,000 berries. To put that in perspective, this is higher than Luffy's bounty immediately after defeating Kaido. It eclipses the bounties of Trafalgar Law and Eustace Kid, both of whom defeated Big Mom. Yet everyone who knows Buggy personally, from Luffy to Nami to his own supposed subordinates Crocodile and Mihawk, understands the truth. Buggy is not strong in the traditional sense. He is not a master of haki. He has not awakened his devil fruit. In a direct fight, countless pirates could defeat him. But power in One Piece has never been solely about physical strength. And Buggy's story proves that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is not a sword or a devil fruit, but a reputation that grows beyond your control, fed by the assumptions and fears of everyone watching. Tonight, we will trace the full arc of his journey. From a young boy arguing with Shanks on the deck of the Pirate King's ship, to a desperate pirate swallowing a devil fruit by accident, to a prisoner breaking out of the world's most secure prison, to an emperor whose very title makes the world government tremble. This is the story of how a clown became a king, not through strength, but through the sheer improbable force of his existence. 39 years before the current timeline, somewhere in the chaotic waters of the Grand Line, a boy named Buggy was born. The details of his earliest years remain shrouded in mystery. Unlike Luffy, whose grandfather and father's identities shaped his destiny, or Shanks, whose celestial dragon heritage was eventually revealed, Buggy's origins are humble and unknown. There is no grand lineage, no prophesied bloodline, just a child born into a world of pirates and chaos. What we know for certain is that by the age of 9, Buggy had already found himself aboard the most legendary pirate ship to ever sail the seas, the Oro Jackson, the vessel of Gol D, the man who would become the Pirate King. How exactly Buggy came to join this crew is never fully explained. The Roger Pirates were known for their selective membership, taking only the most skilled and promising individuals. Yet there he was, a young boy with a prominent red nose and an even more prominent personality, serving as an apprentice alongside another child who would change the world. That other child was Shanks. The Roger Pirates were not just any crew. They were the crew that would conquer the Grand Line, discover the truth of the Void Century, and reach the final island of Laughtale. Every member was exceptional in their own right. Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King and Roger's right hand, was a master of all 3 forms of haki. Scopper Gaban was Roger's left hand, equally formidable. Crocus, who would later guard the entrance to the Grand Line at Reverse Mountain, was their doctor. And at the helm of it all was Gol D Roger himself, a man with an incurable disease who nevertheless conquered the world. And there, among these legends, were 2 young boys, Shanks and Buggy, the future emperor and the future clown. From the very beginning, their relationship was complicated. They fought constantly, bickering over the most trivial things imaginable. Whether the North Pole or South Pole was colder, whether treasure was the most important thing to a pirate, or if there was something more. These arguments became so frequent and so loud that Rayleigh would regularly have to intervene, scolding the 2 boys for their endless squabbling. Yet despite the constant friction, they were inseparable. Whitebeard himself, during his battles with the Roger Pirates, noted that Shanks and Buggy were always together. The Marines would later describe their bond as brotherly, though whether they saw each other as friends or rivals was unclear even to outside observers. Kuzuki Oden, during his time with the Roger Pirates, wondered openly whether the 2 boys were friends or enemies, unable to discern the true nature of their relationship. The truth, as with many things involving Buggy, was complicated. Shanks was everything Buggy was not. Naturally gifted, courageous, and possessing an inner strength that even Roger recognized. Shanks would go on to receive Roger's treasured straw hat, a symbol of faith in his future greatness. Meanwhile, Buggy was pragmatic, treasure-focused, and driven by dreams of wealth rather than adventure for its own sake. In his youth, Buggy even accused Shanks of being too soft to make it as a pirate. He saw Shanks' idealism and compassion as weaknesses that would hold him back. The irony of this assessment would become painfully clear decades later, when Shanks became one of the 4 emperors through his strength and character, while Buggy achieved the same title through a series of cosmic accidents and misunderstandings. But back then, on the deck of the Oro Jackson, they were just 2 boys experiencing the greatest adventure the world had to offer, not yet knowing how their paths would diverge or how their fates would remain eternally intertwined. The years Buggy spent with the Roger Pirates were years spent witnessing history. These were not ordinary pirate voyages. The Roger Pirates were circumnavigating the entire world, seeking out the mysteries that the world government had tried to bury. They were reading poneglyphs, ancient stone monuments containing the true history of the world. They were visiting islands that had been lost to legend. They were making enemies and allies of the most powerful forces on the seas. One of the most significant events young Buggy witnessed was the Battle of Ed War. The Golden Lion Shiki, captain of the Golden Lion Pirates and one of the most fearsome pirates of that era, commanded a fleet so vast it could blot out the horizon. Historical records suggest Shiki wanted to team up with Roger to conquer the world together. With his massive fleet and Roger's knowledge and strength, they would be unstoppable. When Shiki made his proposal, the 12-year-old Buggy was terrified. The Golden Lion pirates numbered in the thousands, their ships stretching across the ocean like a floating fortress. Buggy pleaded with Roger to accept Shiki's offer, to avoid the inevitable battle that would come from refusing such overwhelming force. But Roger, true to his nature, refused without hesitation. He had no interest in ruling the world. His dream was freedom, adventure, and the thrill of the journey itself. And so the Battle of Ed War commenced, a clash so massive that it would be remembered for generations. The battle itself was fierce and brutal, but just as it seemed the tide might turn against Roger, nature itself intervened. A massive storm swept through the battlefield, destroying much of Shiki's fleet. The battle was declared a draw, though the storm had clearly favored Roger. It was the kind of impossible luck that seemed to follow Roger throughout his journey. The same kind of luck that would, decades later, seem to inexplicably attach itself to Buggy. Another pivotal moment came when the Roger pirates encountered the Whitebeard pirates in the New World. These meetings were not uncommon, as both crews operated in overlapping territories. The Roger pirates and Whitebeard pirates would clash multiple times, engaging in battles that lasted for days. But these were not fights to the death. There was a strange respect between the two crews, an acknowledgement that they were two sides of the same coin, two groups of people seeking freedom on the seas in their own way. During one of these encounters, Roger made an unusual request. He asked Whitebeard to lend him one of his crew members, the samurai Kuzuki Oden. Oden was a man of incredible strength and importance, someone who could read the poneglyphs and help Roger uncover the truth of the world. Whitebeard was reluctant, but eventually agreed, and Oden joined the Roger pirates for the final leg of their journey. Young Buggy and Shanks were present for all of this. They saw the clashes between titans. They witnessed the gift exchanges that happened during ceasefires, and they began to understand, in their own ways, what it meant to be a pirate in this world of legends and monsters. During these encounters with Whitebeard's crew, Buggy noticed something that others might have missed. There was a young man among Whitebeard's crew who never seemed to sleep. Marshal D. Teach, who would later become the pirate known as Blackbeard, was already there, already observing, already planning. Buggy pointed this out to Shanks, mentioning that he had heard Teach had never slept in his entire life. It was a small observation, but it stuck with Shanks, a detail that would become relevant many years later. The Roger pirates traveled everywhere. They visited Water 7, where they met the legendary shipwright Tom, who had built the Oro Jackson itself. They journeyed to the sky island of Skypire, where Buggy became utterly entranced by the massive golden bell. They went to Zoo, the ancient island on the back of a 1,000-year-old elephant. They went to Wano, a closed-off country steeped in tradition. For young Buggy, each island presented new possibilities for treasure. While Shanks was absorbing the adventure and the lessons of freedom and courage, Buggy was cataloguing riches, mapping out where fortunes might be found, already thinking about his own future as an independent pirate with more wealth than he could ever spend. But there was one island they would never see together, one final destination that the Roger pirates would reach, but Buggy and Shanks would not witness. Just before the crew was set to make their final voyage to Laughtail, the island at the end of the world where the One Piece awaited, Buggy fell seriously ill. He was unable to continue the journey, and Shanks, in a moment that defined his character, chose to stay behind with his rival and friend. Rather than witness the culmination of everything they had worked toward, rather than see the treasure that Roger would find, and learn the truth that would make Roger the Pirate King, Shanks remained with Buggy until he recovered. This act of loyalty would haunt their relationship. Buggy would always wonder if Shanks pitied him, if Shanks stayed behind out of sympathy rather than genuine care. And Shanks would carry the burden of never seeing Laughtail with his own eyes. A decision he made without hesitation, but whose consequences would ripple through both their lives. The greatest turning point in Buggy's life came not from a grand decision or a moment of courage, but from a mishap so absurd it could only happen to him. It began with a raid, the kind of operation the Roger pirates conducted routinely. They spotted an enemy ship on the horizon, and as was their custom, prepared to attack and plunder whatever treasures might be aboard. During this raid, the crew acquired 2 items of great interest. The first was a devil fruit, a strange fruit with swirling patterns that granted incredible powers to whoever consumed it. This particular fruit was the Bara Bara no Mi, the Chop Chop fruit, a paramecia-type devil fruit that would allow its user to split their body into pieces and control those pieces independently. Additionally, it would grant complete immunity to all slashing and cutting attacks. The second item Buggy found during the raid was a treasure map. Based on what we know from the story, this map pointed to an underwater treasure, something that would require diving deep beneath the ocean's surface to retrieve. When Shanks told Buggy about the devil fruit and mentioned that such fruits could sell for 100 million berries on the black market, something clicked in Buggy's mind. Here was his ticket to independence. Here was the funding he would need to start his own crew, to break away from the Roger pirates and seek his fortune on his own terms. Buggy had always valued treasure above all else. To him, being a pirate meant accumulating wealth, finding hidden fortunes, and living in luxury. He had no grand dreams of freedom like Roger, no desire to help people like Shanks seemed to want. He was pragmatic, materialistic, and absolutely determined to become rich. So Buggy formulated a plan. He would create a fake devil fruit something that looked like the real thing. Then he would eat this fake fruit in front of the entire crew, convincing them that he had consumed the real one and that it had granted him no powers, making it worthless. In reality, he would keep the genuine Bara Bara no Mi hidden, planning to sell it later to finance his pirate career. On the day of his deception, everything went according to plan initially. Buggy stood before his crewmates and made a show of eating what they believed was the devil fruit. He acted disappointed when nothing happened, and the crew moved on, apparently convinced that this particular fruit was a dud. Later, Buggy retreated to one of the ship's lifeboats, the real Bara Bara no Mi in his possession, along with the treasure map he had secretly kept. He was floating there by himself, gloating about his scheme, already imagining the riches that awaited him. He would sell the fruit for a fortune, then use that money to fund expeditions to find the underwater treasure marked on his map. He would have everything he needed to become the greatest treasure hunter in the world. But then Shanks appeared. Shanks had simply come to talk to Buggy about something. Nothing important, just a casual conversation. But Buggy panicked. He quickly hid the devil fruit in his mouth to conceal it, intending to keep it there until Shanks left. Then Shanks said something, some casual remark or unexpected observation that startled Buggy. Surprised, Buggy inhaled sharply, and in that moment of shock, he accidentally swallowed the Bara Bara no Mi whole. The effect was instantaneous. Buggy felt the power of the devil fruit coursing through him, his body fundamentally altered at a molecular level. The crew's devil fruit was gone. Consumed not in a heroic moment of choice, but through a stupid accident caused by Shanks' untimely interruption. But the nightmare was only beginning. As Buggy raged at Shanks, blaming him for ruining everything, Buggy's treasure map blew away in the wind. It fluttered through the air and landed in the ocean, sinking quickly below the surface. Buggy didn't hesitate. That map represented his entire future, his path to wealth and independence. He dove into the water after it, reaching desperately for the paper as it descended into the blue. That's when reality crashed down on him with the weight of the entire ocean. Devil fruit users cannot swim. The moment Buggy hit the water and his strength left him, he began to sink, unable to move, unable to save himself, watching helplessly as both the map and his consciousness faded into darkness. Shanks dove in after him, pulling him back to the surface and saving his life. But the damage was done. Buggy had lost his treasure map, the map he had risked everything to steal. He had lost the chance to sell the devil fruit for a fortune. And he had gained a power he never wanted, one that would forever prevent him from swimming, from diving into the ocean to retrieve underwater treasures, from accessing the very riches he had dreamed about. From that moment, Buggy blamed Shanks for everything. If Shanks hadn't startled him, he would still have the fruit to sell. If Shanks hadn't interrupted, the map wouldn't have blown away. In Buggy's mind, Shanks had stolen his future, his fortune, and his freedom. This grudge would last for more than 3 decades, a resentment so deep that even when they met again as adults, even after both had become legendary pirates in their own right, Buggy would still hold Shanks responsible for that single moment when everything went wrong. But the Bara Bara no Mi, the fruit Buggy never wanted, would save his life more times than he could count. It would make him immune to the attacks of swordsmen, allowing him to survive encounters with Dracul Mihawk, the strongest swordsman in the world. It would let him split apart to avoid attacks, to escape from prison, to survive situations that would have killed any normal pirate 100 times over. Buggy adapted to his new reality. Since he could no longer search for underwater treasures, he decided he would simply have to find all the treasure on land instead. It wasn't the life he had imagined, but it was the life he had, and he would make the most of it in his own cowardly, opportunistic way. The final voyage of the Roger Pirates was bittersweet for everyone involved, but perhaps most complicated for Buggy. While he had recovered from his illness and rejoined the crew, the dynamic had shifted. Shanks had stayed behind with him, missing the journey to Laughtail, and Buggy knew it. That act of friendship, or pity, or whatever it had been, hung between them unspoken. The Roger Pirates completed their journey around the world. They reached Laughtail, discovered the One Piece, and learned the truth of the Void Century. Roger became the Pirate King, the first and only man to conquer the Grand Line. But his victory was hollow in a way, because Roger was dying. The disease that had been slowly killing him throughout their journey had progressed too far. He had perhaps a year left, maybe less. Roger made a decision that shocked the world. He turned himself in to the Marines, allowing himself to be captured and scheduled for public execution. His crew was devastated, but they understood. Roger wanted to go out on his own terms, to make a statement with his death that would echo across the seas. The day of Roger's execution, Buggy was there in Logetown, watching from the crowd. He was 17 years old, no longer a child, but not yet the pirate he would become. He stood in the square, surrounded by spectators who had come to witness the death of the Pirate King. And he watched as Roger walked to the execution platform with a smile on his face. The executioners asked Roger about his treasure, about where he had hidden the One Piece. And Roger, with his last words, told the world that his treasure was real, that everything he had found was out there waiting, and that whoever could find it could have it all. Those words ignited the great pirate era. Thousands of men and women who had never considered piracy before suddenly dreamed of adventure and fortune. The world was thrown into chaos, exactly as Roger had intended. He didn't just die. He planted a seed that would grow into a forest of rebellion and freedom. But for Buggy, Roger's death meant something more personal. It meant the end of the only family he had known. The Roger Pirates disbanded after their captain's execution, each member going their separate way. Some retired from piracy altogether. Some joined other crews. Some, like Rayleigh, went into hiding to avoid the Marines' pursuit. And Shanks approached Buggy with an offer. He was forming his own crew, and he wanted Buggy to join him. They could sail together, just as they had under Roger. They could continue the adventure that had defined their childhood. But Buggy refused. The reasons for his refusal were complex, a mixture of pride, resentment, and a desire to prove himself independently. He didn't want to be Shanks' underling. He didn't want to live in Shanks's shadow. He wanted to forge his own path, to be his own captain, to find his own fortune without owing anything to the boy he had spent his entire youth arguing with. Perhaps there was also a part of Buggy that was hurt by Shanks's strength. Shanks had been given Roger's hat, the ultimate symbol of the Pirate King's faith and approval. Shanks was clearly destined for greatness, marked by fate itself. And Buggy? Buggy had a devil fruit he never wanted and a reputation for being second best. So they parted ways. Shanks went west, eventually becoming one of the 4 emperors through his incredible strength, mastery of haki, and the respect he commanded from allies and enemies alike. And Buggy? Buggy drifted. The first few months after the Roger Pirates disbanded were difficult for him. He had a very small sailboat, barely large enough for one person, and he had to steal food and work odd jobs just to get by. He was a former apprentice of the Pirate King, but that meant nothing if you couldn't feed yourself. Eventually, Buggy made his way through various islands and experiences, slowly gathering resources and planning his next move. He formed the Buggy Pirates, recruiting a small crew of misfits and circus performers who were drawn to his flashy personality and big promises. Among his earliest recruits were Moji, a beast tamer who rode alongside a lion named Richie, and Kabaji, an acrobat and swordsman who could perform elaborate tricks on a unicycle. With his crew assembled, Buggy set his sights on the East Blue, the weakest of the 4 seas. It was a strategic choice. In the East Blue, he wouldn't have to compete with the monsters of the Grand Line. He could build his reputation, gather treasure, and terrorize small towns without risking his life against opponents who could actually defeat him. And so began the next chapter of his life, the period where Buggy would become known not as a legendary pirate, but as a petty tyrant, a clown who terrorized villages and stole from the weak. It was not the glorious career he had imagined during his youth aboard the Oro Jackson, but it was safe, profitable, and allowed him to survive in a world that had become far more dangerous after Roger's death. The Bara Bara no Mi that Buggy accidentally consumed is, in many ways, the perfect metaphor for his entire existence. It is a devil fruit that seems weak at first glance, almost comical in its application, yet possesses hidden strengths that have saved Buggy's life countless times. Understanding this fruit is essential to understanding how Buggy has survived in a world where far stronger pirates have fallen. The primary ability of the Bara Bara no Mi is deceptively simple. It allows the user to split their body into pieces and control those pieces independently. Buggy can separate his hands from his arms, his head from his torso, his legs from his hips. These separated parts can then levitate and move through the air within a range of approximately 200 meters from his feet, which must remain on the ground or some solid surface to anchor his power. This ability makes Buggy incredibly difficult to hit in combat. When an opponent swings at him, he can simply separate the targeted body part, causing the attack to pass harmlessly through empty air. When someone tries to stab him, he can split apart so the blade finds nothing but space between his pieces. This gives him an extraordinary defensive capability that has allowed him to survive encounters with opponents who should have killed him instantly. But the true power of the Bara Bara no Mi is its passive effect: complete immunity to all cutting and slashing attacks. Any attack that relies on a blade, from a simple knife to the most powerful sword strikes in the world, is completely ineffective against Buggy. The moment a blade touches his body, that part automatically splits, rendering the cut meaningless. This immunity is not something Buggy consciously activates. It is always active, a permanent part of his physiology. This means that Buggy could, in theory, face the greatest swordsman in the world without fear. Dracul Mihawk, the man called the strongest swordsman in the world, whose blade can slice through battleships and whose skills are said to rival even Shanks himself, cannot cut Buggy. Every slash, no matter how powerful or precise, would simply cause Buggy to split harmlessly. During the Marineford War, this exact scenario occurred. Mihawk, curious about Luffy's abilities, launched an enormous slash attack toward the young pirate. Buggy, through his usual combination of cowardice and bad luck, ended up in the path of this attack. The slash that could have bisected a giant struck Buggy squarely, and he simply split in two, completely unharmed, before reassembling moments later with a cocky grin. This immunity extends to all forms of slashing attacks, not just swords. Doflamingo's razor-sharp strings, capable of slicing through buildings and decapitating men in an instant, would be useless against Buggy. Any devil fruit ability that relies on cutting, any weapon with a blade, any fighting style based on slashing motions, all of it is negated by the Bara Bara no Mi's passive defense. However, the fruit is not without its limitations. Buggy remains vulnerable to blunt force attacks. Punching him, striking him with blunt weapons, or hitting him with concussive force can all cause real damage. Luffy's rubber-based attacks were particularly effective against Buggy for this reason. When Luffy punched Buggy, the impact transferred directly through his body, unable to be negated by splitting apart. Additionally, Buggy can only control his separated body parts within a limited range. His feet must remain on a solid surface as an anchor point, while the rest of his body cannot float and move within roughly 200 feet from where his feet are planted. If one of his pieces is taken beyond this distance, he loses control over it. That piece becomes inert, unable to move or return to him until it is brought back within range. This limitation was exploited during his first encounter with the Straw Hats, when Nami trapped different parts of Buggy's body in separate cages, preventing him from reassembling. There's also the fundamental devil fruit weakness that all users share. Buggy cannot swim, and seawater or sea stone will drain his strength and nullify his powers. Any prolonged contact with the ocean or sea stone handcuffs will leave him as helpless as any other devil fruit user, unable to split apart or defend himself. Despite these limitations, the Bara Bara no Mi has proven to be far more versatile and useful than it initially appears. Buggy can launch his hands at opponents while holding weapons, creating projectile attacks that can strike from unexpected angles. He can separate his body to slip through narrow spaces, avoid environmental hazards, or escape from bonds that would hold a normal person. He can even survive having his head completely separated from his body for extended periods, maintaining consciousness and awareness even when his various parts are scattered across different locations. Interestingly, creator Eiichiro Oda has stated that the Bara Bara no Mi is one of his favorite devil fruits. While the exact reason for this fascination is unknown, it likely stems from the fruit's creative potential and the way it can be used for both comedy and surprisingly effective combat applications. Oda has consistently portrayed Buggy's power in ways that subvert expectations, making it seem ridiculous in one moment and genuinely threatening the next. There is also persistent speculation among fans that if Buggy were to ever awaken his devil fruit, as powerful users sometimes do, the results could be extraordinary. A paramecia awakening typically allows the user to extend their ability to affect their surroundings, and not just themselves. If this pattern holds true for Buggy, an awakened Bara Bara no Mi might grant him the ability to split anything he touches, not just his own body. This could imply the power to separate buildings, to split apart the ground beneath his enemy's feet, or to dismantle ships or weapons with a touch. Such an awakening could transform what appears to be primarily a defensive ability into one of the most destructive powers in existence. But that remains theoretical. As it stands, Buggy has never pushed his devil fruit abilities to their limits. He has never trained seriously, never attempted to master advanced techniques, never explored the full potential of what the Bara Bara no Mi could do. And this lack of ambition, this refusal to develop his natural advantages, is quintessentially Buggy. He is content to use his powers for survival and spectacle, never pushing himself to grow, never aspiring to become truly strong. Yet even with this minimal effort, the Bara Bara no Mi has carried Buggy through situations that should have killed him a dozen times over. It is a fruit that rewards survival rather than victory, that allows escape rather than domination. And for Buggy, who has built his entire career on surviving just one more day, avoiding just one more fight, and escaping just one more deadly situation, it is perhaps the perfect power. After establishing his pirate crew, Buggy set his course for the East Blue, the sea known throughout the world as the weakest of the four. While the Grand Line churned with emperors, warlords, and marines capable of leveling islands, the East Blue was relatively peaceful. The strongest pirates there were small time compared to the monsters of the New World. The Marines were less numerous and less experienced. For someone like Buggy, who wanted treasure without excessive risk, it was the perfect hunting ground. The Buggy pirates made a name for themselves through pure theatrical intimidation. Buggy understood something that many pirates missed. In a world without instant communication or widespread photography, reputation could be built on stories and spectacle rather than actual strength. If he destroyed a town dramatically enough, if he made his entrance with cannons blazing and his crew performing acrobatic displays, people would remember the spectacle more than the actual damage. Fear could be cultivated through showmanship. His crew reflected this philosophy. They dressed like circus performers, with Buggy as the ringmaster clown. Moji and his lion Richie provided the beast-taming act. Kabaji performed sword tricks on a unicycle, more concerned with flair than actual swordsmanship. The ship itself was designed to look threatening, with a clown face painted on its bow and colorful decorations that made it instantly recognizable. Everything about the Buggy Pirates was designed to be memorable, to be talked about in taverns and feared by common people who had never actually witnessed what real power looked like. For years, this strategy worked perfectly. Buggy would raid small villages, taking their treasure while his crew put on their circus performance. The townspeople, terrified by the spectacle and unaware of how weak Buggy actually was compared to Grand Line pirates, would surrender without much fight. Buggy would leave with his loot, his reputation would grow, and he would move on to the next target. One of his major conquests was Orange Town, a peaceful settlement known for its pet food store and quiet streets. Buggy arrived with his full crew, announcing his intention to claim the town as his territory. The mayor, Boodle, tried to stand up to him, but was quickly overwhelmed. The townspeople fled, abandoning their homes rather than face the theatrical pirate and his circus crew. Buggy made Orange Town his temporary base, storing his stolen treasure there while planning his next moves. He heard rumors about a certain map to the Grand Line held by a skilled navigator, and sent some of his crew to retrieve it. He also kept his ear to the ground for any news of hidden treasures, legendary weapons, or valuable items he could steal. It was during this period of comfortable tyranny that everything changed. A small boat arrived in Orange Town carrying a boy in a straw hat, a swordsman with green hair, and a talented thief with orange hair. The boy introduced himself as Monkey D. Luffy, and he had come to take down Buggy the Clown. At first, Buggy didn't take the threat seriously. This was some nobody from East Blue, probably another wannabe pirate, who didn't understand how dangerous the seas could be. Buggy had faced dozens of such challenges, and they all ended the same way, either dead or running away in terror. But Luffy was different. When Buggy used his Bara Bara no Mi powers to split apart and avoid attacks, Luffy adapted immediately. When Buggy tried to intimidate him with threats and displays of power, Luffy didn't flinch. And when the fight truly began, Buggy discovered something horrifying. Luffy's rubber-based devil fruit powers were the perfect counter to his own abilities. Luffy could hit Buggy with blunt force attacks that completely bypassed the Bara Bara no Mi's slashing immunity. Every punch connected, every kick landed solidly. Buggy's usual tactics of splitting apart to avoid damage were useless when his opponent wasn't trying to cut him. For the first time in years, Buggy was facing someone who could actually hurt him. The battle escalated until Luffy grabbed Buggy's separated body parts and used them as weapons, swinging Buggy's own torso around like a flail. The indignity was unbearable. Buggy, the former apprentice of the Pirate King, the man who had sailed with legends, was being defeated by a rookie pirate who had just started his journey. Nami, the navigator who had temporarily allied with Luffy, managed to trap different parts of Buggy's body in separate cages, preventing him from reassembling. His crew was defeated. His treasure was taken. His reputation in East Blue was shattered, and Luffy sailed away, leaving Buggy broken and humiliated in the ruins of Orange Town. But Buggy survived. He always survived. His scattered body parts were eventually reunited, and he swore vengeance against Monkey D. Luffy. This wouldn't be the end of their encounters. This was just the beginning of a strange relationship, where Luffy would repeatedly and accidentally help Buggy achieve greater and greater heights of undeserved success. After recovering from his defeat, Buggy encountered another person who had been humiliated by Luffy, Alvida, a female pirate who had been the first person Luffy ever fought. She had since eaten a devil fruit of her own, the Sube Sube no Mi, which made her skin perfectly smooth and beautiful. Together, Buggy and Alvida formed an alliance, pursuing Luffy with revenge in their hearts. They followed Luffy's path through East Blue, always arriving just after he had left, finding only the wreckage of whatever chaos he had caused. They chased him to Logue Town, the town where Gol D had been executed, the place where Buggy had witnessed the end of his mentor's life decades earlier. In Logue Town, fate presented Buggy with an opportunity too perfect to ignore. Luffy had been captured and placed on the same execution platform where Roger had died. The symbolism was overwhelming. Buggy could kill Luffy on the exact spot where the Pirate King had been executed. He could erase the humiliation of Orange Town. He could prove that he was still a threat, still someone to be feared. Buggy prepared to execute Luffy himself, delivering a speech to the gathered crowd about how this upstart pirate would die just like Roger had. But just as he was about to deliver the killing blow, lightning struck the execution platform. A massive bolt came from seemingly nowhere, destroying the platform and freeing Luffy in a flash of light and thunder. It was the same kind of impossible luck that had saved Roger so many times, the same inexplicable fortune that Buggy had witnessed throughout his youth. And now it was protecting Luffy, the boy in the straw hat who carried Roger's will forward into a new generation. Buggy escaped Logue Town before the Marines could capture him, but he was shaken. Seeing Luffy saved by that lightning strike, seeing history repeat itself in such an uncanny way, made Buggy realize that something larger was happening. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Luffy represented something that Buggy had tried to escape from his entire life. The legacy of Gol D and the will that connected certain pirates across generations. Rather than follow Luffy into the Grand Line immediately, Buggy decided to take a different approach. He would build his strength, gather more crew members, and enter the Grand Line when he was ready. But fate, as always, had other plans for Buggy the Clown. The next major chapter of Buggy's life began with capture and imprisonment. The details of how exactly Buggy was caught by the Marines are not fully known, but eventually he found himself arrested and sentenced to Impel Down, the world's most secure prison facility. Impel Down was built on the Calm Belt, surrounded by sea kings so massive they could swallow ships whole. It descended deep underground, with multiple levels growing progressively more horrific the deeper you went. Level 1, The Crimson Hell was filled with forests of blade-like grass and trees that could cut you just by touching them. Prisoners were forced to run through these areas, accumulating thousands of tiny cuts. Level 2, the Wild Beast Hell, contained various carnivorous beasts that hunted prisoners for sport. Level 3, the Starvation Hell, was a hot desert where prisoners received minimal food and water. Level 4, the Blazing Hell, was a pool of boiling blood. Level 5, the Freezing Hell, was so cold that prisoners' bodies would slowly freeze solid. And Level 6, Eternal Hell, was reserved for the most dangerous criminals in the world, pirates whose very existence had been erased from history by the world government. Buggy was placed in Level 1, relatively high up in the prison structure. This placement was both an insult and a relief. It meant the world government didn't consider him particularly dangerous, which wounded his pride. But it also meant he wasn't subjected to the worst tortures that deeper levels endured. Life in Impel Down was miserable. The heat, the constant threat of violence from other prisoners, the sadistic guards who took pleasure in tormenting inmates, and the knowledge that he would likely spend the rest of his life in this place. Buggy had survived so much, had come so far from his days on the Roger Pirates, only to end up rotting in a cell. Then Monkey D. Luffy broke into Impel Down. Luffy had come to rescue his brother, Portgas D. Ace, who was scheduled for execution as part of the world government's plan to draw out Whitebeard. Luffy's intrusion threw the entire prison into chaos. Alarms blared, guards rushed to contain the situation, and prisoners saw an opportunity they never thought they'd have. Escape. Buggy, hearing the commotion, couldn't believe his luck when he realized who was causing it. That same rookie who had defeated him in East Blue was now breaking into the world's most secure prison. If Buggy could somehow use this chaos to his advantage, he might actually escape. He encountered Luffy on Level 2, and despite their history, they formed a temporary alliance. Luffy needed help navigating the prison and dealing with the various guards and obstacles. Buggy wanted to use Luffy as a shield and distraction while he looked for a way out. It was a partnership built on mutual opportunism rather than trust. Along the way, they encountered Gol D, better known as Mr. 3, a former member of the criminal organization Baroque Works. Mr. 3 had the power of the Doru Doru no Mi, which allowed him to create and manipulate wax. Initially, Mr. 3 wanted nothing to do with Buggy and Luffy's escape attempt. He had found a relatively safe hiding spot and planned to wait out the chaos. But Buggy convinced him otherwise through a combination of threats, promises, and an appeal to Mr. 3's sense of self-preservation. If they worked together, using Buggy's knowledge of the prison layout, Luffy's strength, and Mr. 3's wax abilities, they might actually make it out alive. Their escape attempt brought them face to face with some of the most dangerous individuals in the prison. They encountered Magellan, the prison's warden, whose Doku Doku no Mi gave him complete control over poison. A single touch from Magellan could kill within hours. Luffy charged ahead to fight him, while Buggy and Mr. 3 wisely ran in the opposite direction. They also crossed paths, with other legendary prisoners. Crocodile, the former warlord who Luffy had defeated in Alabasta, was being held in the lower levels. Jinbei, the fishman and future ally of Luffy, was imprisoned there as well. Emporio Ivankov, the Revolutionary Army commander, had actually been living in a secret level between floors 5 and 6, creating a small paradise for prisoners he had helped over the years. As the chaos intensified and more prisoners joined the escape attempt, Buggy found himself at the center of something unprecedented. Word spread among the inmates that Buggy had served on the Pirate King's crew, that he had sailed with Gol D himself. This rumor, which was actually true, but which Buggy had downplayed for years, suddenly gave him enormous credibility. Prisoners who had been in Impel Down for decades, hardened criminals with bounties in the tens of millions, started looking to Buggy for leadership. They saw him as a link to the legendary age of pirates, as someone who understood what true freedom meant, because he had experienced it firsthand under Roger. Buggy, recognizing an opportunity, leaned into this perception. He gave inspiring speeches about freedom and adventure, carefully omitting the parts where he was terrified and had no idea what he was doing. He presented himself as a leader worthy of following, as someone with a plan and the courage to challenge the world government's ultimate prison. The truth was that Buggy was making everything up as he went along, desperately trying to survive and escape while maintaining the illusion that he was in control. But the prisoners believed in him. They rallied around him. And when the massive prisoner revolt finally reached its climax, with hundreds of inmates fighting their way toward freedom, Buggy was at the front, waving dramatically and shouting about liberation. The escape attempt culminated in a battle on the frozen waters outside Impel Down. Marine battleships surrounded the prison, ready to recapture or kill anyone who made it out. But Luffy and his allies had stolen a marine ship, and the freed prisoners fought desperately to protect their chance at freedom. Buggy ended up on that ship, surrounded by prisoners who saw him as their captain, their liberator, the man who had led them out of hell itself. And when they finally sailed away from Impel Down, leaving the prison behind them, Buggy had inadvertently acquired a crew of loyal followers who would follow him anywhere. He had entered Impel Down as a failed pirate captain, defeated and imprisoned. He left as the leader of a small army of hardened criminals who believed he was destined for greatness. All because he had tried to use Luffy as a human shield, and accidentally ended up looking heroic in the process. The escape from Impel Down delivered Buggy and his new followers directly into the middle of the largest war the world had seen in decades. The Marines had gathered their entire military force at Marineford, their headquarters, to execute Portgas D. Ace publicly. Whitebeard, one of the 4 emperors and the strongest man in the world, was bringing his entire fleet to rescue Ace, who was one of his beloved sons. Every significant power in the world was converging on this single location. The 3 Marine admirals, Akainu, Kizaru, and Aokiji, were there, each one capable of destroying islands with their devil fruit powers. The 7 warlords of the sea had been summoned to fight on the Marine side, including Mihawk, Doflamingo, and Hancock. The Fleet Admiral Sengoku, legendary for his tactical brilliance and his mythical Zoan Buddha fruit, commanded the entire operation. On the other side, Whitebeard brought his division commanders, each one a powerful pirate in their own right, along with allied pirate crews numbering in the thousands. The New World pirates who followed Whitebeard were battle-hardened veterans who had survived in the most dangerous ocean in the world. And into this apocalyptic battlefield sailed Buggy, desperately trying to escape, accidentally broadcasting the entire war to the world. Buggy had acquired a baby Den Mushi, a small transponder snail used for communication. Unbeknownst to him, every major news outlet in the world was watching the war through video Den Mushi, and somehow Buggy's snail had gotten connected to the broadcast network. Everything he did, every place he went, was being transmitted to screens across the globe. The world watched as Buggy, this clown-faced pirate, wandered through the battlefield avoiding death by sheer luck. They saw him accidentally interrupt attacks from powerful fighters. They watched as he gave dramatic speeches about standing up to the Marines, speeches that were really just Buggy panicking and trying to look brave in front of his followers. What the world didn't see was how terrified Buggy was. Every few seconds, someone strong enough to kill him instantly would pass nearby. Mihawk would launch a slash that Buggy would accidentally avoid. Akainu would create a magma fist that would miss Buggy by inches. Buggy's devil fruit powers and natural cowardice created a perfect combination that kept him alive through sheer random chance. At one point, Buggy encountered Shanks on the battlefield. Shanks had arrived late to the war, appearing suddenly to stop the fighting before more lives were lost unnecessarily. When their eyes met across the chaos, decades of history passed between them. They had been boys together on Roger's ship. They had sailed the world together. And now they stood on opposite sides of a war, though Buggy wasn't really fighting for any side except his own survival. The prisoners who had escaped impelled down with Buggy, seeing him interact casually with Shanks, one of the 4 emperors, became even more convinced of Buggy's legendary status. Only someone of great importance could speak to an emperor as an equal. Only someone with incredible power could stand, unafraid, in Shanks' presence. In reality, Buggy was mostly just complaining about how Shanks had ruined his life decades ago, and Shanks was responding with his usual good-natured patience. But from the outside, it looked like 2 legendary pirates acknowledging their shared history. When Whitebeard died, standing on his feet even in death, never showing his back to an enemy, the war shifted. The Marines had won, but at an enormous cost. Ace was dead, killed by Akainu's magma fist while protecting Luffy. The Whitebeard pirates were broken, retreating to preserve what remained of their crew. And Shanks negotiated an end to the fighting, his presence and power enough to make even the Marines stand down. Throughout all of this, Buggy survived without a scratch. He had wandered through a battlefield where admirals threw around enough destructive force to sink islands, where emperors clashed with world-shaking power, where the warlords unleashed their various abilities, and he had emerged, completely unharmed through no skill of his own. The broadcast of the war, with Buggy featured prominently because of his accidental connection to the video network, made him famous worldwide. People who had never heard of Buggy the Clown now knew his name. They had seen him at Marineford, seen him walking among legends, seen him survive the deadliest war in recent history. His bounty increased, his reputation grew, and most importantly, the prisoners who had followed him out of Impel Down became fanatically loyal. They had seen their captain survive Marineford, had watched him interact with Shanks, and had witnessed his impossible luck. To them, Buggy was clearly protected by fate itself, destined for greatness in a way that normal pirates could never achieve. Buggy left Marineford with more followers, more fame, and more undeserved reputation than ever before. He had accidentally become a significant figure in the world of One Piece, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. In the aftermath of the Paramount War, the world was in chaos. Whitebeard's death created a power vacuum in the New World, with various pirates fighting to claim his former territories. The Marines were recovering from the massive losses they had suffered at Marineford, rebuilding their forces and trying to maintain order. And the Revolutionary Army was becoming more active, emboldened by the demonstration that the world government was not invincible. Buggy, recognizing opportunity when he saw it, decided to capitalize on his newfound fame and his crew of former Impel Down prisoners. He established Buggy's Delivery, a mercenary organization that would provide pirates for hire to anyone who could pay. It was a brilliant business model that played to Buggy's strengths, making money while avoiding direct conflict with anyone too dangerous. The concept was simple. Clients would hire Buggy's Delivery to handle various tasks: escorting ships through dangerous waters, raiding rival pirate crews, intimidating business competitors, or providing muscle for criminal enterprises. Buggy's organization would take the job, send out appropriate crew members, and collect payment. Buggy himself rarely went on these missions, instead managing the operation from a safe distance while taking a cut of all profits. The organization grew rapidly. Many of the prisoners who had escaped Impel Down with Buggy became captains of their own divisions within Buggy's Delivery. They recruited more members, expanding the organization's reach across multiple islands and territories. What started as a small mercenary group soon became a significant power in the underworld, with connections to various criminal networks and legitimate businesses that needed discreet security services. Buggy's Delivery established a reputation for reliability and discretion. Unlike other pirate crews that might double-cross their employers or cause unnecessary destruction, Buggy's organization was professional. They completed their contracts, collected their payment, and moved on to the next job. This professional approach made them popular among clients who needed piracy services without the chaos that typically came with hiring pirates. The organization also served as a cover for Buggy's continued treasure hunting. While his mercenaries were working legitimate jobs, Buggy would use the organization's resources and intelligence network to search for hidden fortunes, ancient treasures, and valuable artifacts. He was still the same treasure-obsessed pirate he had always been, just with a much larger operation supporting his endeavors. Financially, Buggy's Delivery was enormously successful. The organization generated millions of berries in revenue, allowing Buggy to live in the kind of luxury he had dreamed about since his youth. He had ships, resources, information networks, and a reputation that opened doors throughout the criminal underworld. For a pirate who had spent years scraping by in East Blue, this was everything he had wanted. But success brought attention, including attention from the world government. The Marines and the world government's intelligence agencies were aware of Buggy's delivery and its operations. They knew that Buggy was commanding a significant force of criminals, and that his organization was involved in activities that threatened the government's control over various regions. This is when something unexpected happened. Instead of trying to destroy Buggy's organization, the world government extended an invitation. They wanted Buggy to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The warlords were pirates who had made deals with the world government. In exchange for occasionally assisting the Marines and ceasing attacks on government-affiliated nations, the warlords received legal immunity for their past crimes and the freedom to operate without Marine interference. It was a position of tremendous privilege and power, reserved for only the most dangerous or useful pirates. The invitation made sense from the government's perspective. Buggy commanded a large organization of capable fighters. He had connections throughout the underworld, and most importantly, he had demonstrated at Marineford that he could survive in situations where even strong pirates died. Whether they believed in his actual strength or simply found him useful, the government wanted him on their side rather than as a potential enemy. For Buggy, accepting the warlord position was an obvious choice. It meant legal protection for his activities, access to resources and information from the government, and a prestigious title that would make Buggy's delivery even more attractive to potential clients. Who wouldn't want to hire a warlord's organization for their security needs? So Buggy became one of the 7 warlords of the sea, standing alongside pirates like Mihawk, Hancock, and Trafalgar Law. His bounty was frozen at the level it had reached after Marineford, and he was granted official permission to conduct his mercenary operations as long as he occasionally assisted the Marines when called upon. This period represented the height of Buggy's success through his own actions. He had built a legitimate business empire, gained official recognition from the world government, and achieved a level of security and prosperity that few pirates ever experienced. For once, Buggy's success wasn't entirely accidental. He had identified an opportunity, executed a business plan, and maintained his organization's operations effectively. But the position of warlord was always precarious. The world government could revoke the title at any time if a warlord became too troublesome or if the government's priorities changed. And change was coming, driven by events far beyond Buggy's control. The Leveille, the great conference where world leaders gathered to discuss global policy, was approaching. And at this Leveille, certain nations would propose abolishing the warlord system entirely, arguing that the government should not be legitimizing pirates regardless of how useful they might be. This proposal would pass, and suddenly Buggy would find himself stripped of his legal protections, hunted once again by the Marines, and forced to find new ways to survive in a world that had suddenly become much more dangerous. The abolition of the warlord system sent shockwaves through the pirate world. 7 powerful pirates who had enjoyed legal protection and freedom from marine interference suddenly found themselves targets once again. The Marines mobilized to capture these former warlords before they could reorganize or retaliate. For Buggy, this development was catastrophic. Buggy's delivery had operated openly specifically because of his warlord status. Without that protection, the Marines would hunt him relentlessly. His mercenary organization would be classified as a criminal enterprise. Every client, every transaction, every operation would be subject to Marine raids. But Buggy's problems were about to get worse, and simultaneously much better, in the most absurd way possible. Sir Crocodile, the former warlord who Luffy had defeated in Alabasta, approached Buggy with a business proposition. Actually, it wasn't so much a proposition as a debt collection. Years ago, Buggy's delivery had apparently borrowed money from Crocodile, using the funds to expand operations. Now Crocodile wanted his money back, with interest. Buggy, who had spent much of his fortune on luxuries and treasure hunts, didn't have the funds to repay the debt. He tried to negotiate, to offer alternative payment arrangements, but Crocodile wasn't interested in excuses. The debt would be paid, one way or another. Crocodile proposed a solution. They would form a new organization together. Crocodile would forgive Buggy's debt, and in exchange, they would combine their resources and followers into a unified force. Additionally, Crocodile had convinced Dracul Mihawk, the strongest swordsman in the world, and another former warlord, to join this new organization. The partnership made strategic sense from Crocodile's perspective. Buggy had the mercenary organization with its established networks and numerous followers. Crocodile brought his own crew and his tactical brilliance. And Mihawk, though he preferred solitude, recognized that in the current environment there was safety in numbers. Together, they would form a power block strong enough to deter the Marines and maintain their independence. They named this new organization the Cross Guild, and they established a base of operations on the island of Empty Bluffs. The Cross Guild's stated purpose was to hunt Marines, reversing the normal dynamic where pirates fled from Marine pursuit. Crocodile proposed issuing bounties on individual Marines, paying pirates to capture or eliminate Marine officers. It was a bold strategy that would put the government on the defensive and create a new revenue stream by charging pirates for access to the bounty system. But when it came time to promote the Cross Guild publicly, something went catastrophically wrong. The promotional materials, the posters and announcements that would introduce the organization to the world were supposed to position Crocodile as the leader, with Mihawk and Buggy as his subordinates. Instead, through what was officially described as a design mistake, the promotional materials presented Buggy as the president and leader of the Cross Guild, with Crocodile and Mihawk serving under him. The posters showed Buggy's face prominently at the center, larger and more visible than the other two. The text described him as the mastermind behind this new organization that dared to hunt the Marines themselves. How this mistake happened is unclear. Some speculate that Buggy's own people within his former mercenary organization, now absorbed into the Cross Guild, deliberately altered the promotional style. Materials because they genuinely believed Buggy should be the leader. Others suggest it was simple incompetence by whoever was tasked with creating the posters. A few conspiracy theorists even claim that Crocodile arranged the mistake deliberately, using Buggy as a figurehead to draw attention while he and Mihawk operated more freely in the shadows. Regardless of the cause, the effect was immediate and overwhelming. The world saw these promotional materials and believed them. Buggy the Clown, the former apprentice of the Pirate King, the man who had survived Impel Down and Marineford, who had commanded a mercenary organization and served as a warlord, had now formed an alliance with Crocodile and Mihawk, convincing two incredibly powerful pirates to serve under his leadership. The world government, assessing this new threat, made a decision that would change Buggy's life forever. They designated Buggy as one of the 4 emperors of the sea, officially recognizing him as one of the 4 most powerful and influential pirates in the world. His bounty was raised to 3,189,000,000 berries, higher than Luffy's bounty after defeating Kaido, higher than Law and Kid's bounties after defeating Big Mom. In the government's assessment, anyone who could command the loyalty of both Crocodile and Mihawk must be extraordinarily dangerous. Crocodile was a former warlord with a powerful Logia devil fruit and decades of experience in the New World's political intrigues. Mihawk was the world's strongest swordsman, a man whose blade could split icebergs and whose skill rivaled even Shanks. If Buggy had convinced these two to follow him, what other terrifying abilities must he possess? The reality, of course, was nothing like the perception. Buggy had not convinced anyone to follow him. He was not the leader of the Cross Guild in any meaningful sense. In fact, Crocodile and Mihawk were furious about the promotional mistake and made Buggy's life absolutely miserable as punishment. Life in the Cross Guild for Buggy became a series of humiliations and near-death experiences. Crocodile, who actually ran the organization's operations, would regularly threaten Buggy when things didn't go according to plan. Mihawk, though less overtly violent, made it clear that he had no respect for Buggy and wouldn't hesitate to cut him down if he became too annoying. When the Cross Guild held meetings to discuss strategy and operations, Buggy was essentially a hostage, forced to sit through discussions where Crocodile and Mihawk made all the decisions, while maintaining the fiction that Buggy was the leader. If Buggy tried to actually assert authority or change plans, Crocodile would respond with barely concealed threats of violence. The followers of the Cross Guild, however, remained convinced of Buggy's supremacy. They saw Crocodile and Mihawk deferring to Buggy in public settings because that's what the organizational structure required for appearances. They witnessed Buggy surviving Crocodile's anger and Mihawk's presence, which to them proved his incredible power. The idea that someone weak could stand in the same room as these two monsters without being killed immediately seemed impossible, so Buggy must be even stronger than he appeared. This misunderstanding was reinforced by Buggy's history. The followers knew he had sailed with Roger. They knew he had survived Marineford. They knew he had built a successful mercenary empire. Every piece of evidence seemed to support the conclusion that Buggy was a hidden master, someone whose true power was concealed beneath a clownish exterior. During one of these meetings, where Crocodile was berating Buggy for some perceived failure, Buggy snapped. Whether from fear, frustration, or a genuine moment of courage remains ambiguous. But Buggy stood up and made an announcement. He wasn't interested in Crocodile's schemes for stability and control. He declared that he was going to find the one piece, the greatest treasure in the world, and that anyone who wanted to follow him on that journey was welcome. This revelation about Buggy's true feelings came during a chapter where he reflected on Shanks making his move toward the treasure, and Buggy tearfully admitted he wanted to be the Pirate King despite having given up on that dream long ago. This declaration, made in front of the assembled members of the Cross Guild, electrified his followers. Here was their captain, declaring his intention to pursue the same dream as the Pirate King. Here was proof that Buggy had inherited Roger's will, that he was destined to reach the end of the Grand Line and claim the ultimate treasure. Crocodile and Mihawk were less than pleased. Crocodile had no interest in a chaotic race for One Piece. His goals were more pragmatic, building a powerful organization, controlling territory, and establishing himself as an undisputed power in the New World. Mihawk simply wanted to be left alone, to practice his swordsmanship in peace without constant interference from Marines or other pirates. But the damage was done. Buggy had declared his intention to seek One Piece, and his followers believed him. The world, hearing this declaration from one of the four emperors, took it seriously. The final race for the ultimate treasure was entering its climax, with Luffy, Blackbeard, Shanks, and now Buggy, all moving toward the final island of Laugh Tale. So Buggy found himself in the most absurd position imaginable. He was an emperor of the sea, one of the four most feared pirates in the world, commanding the loyalty of two vastly more powerful pirates who actually hated him, declaring his intention to find a treasure he had already been to, or at least close to, when he was a child, all while being terrified that at any moment, Crocodile or Mihawk might decide he was more trouble than he was worth and simply kill him. To understand how Buggy became an emperor despite his relative weakness, we must understand one of One Piece's most consistent themes: the power of perception and reputation in shaping reality. In a world where most people never personally encounter the strongest pirates, where news travels slowly and often becomes distorted, where legends and rumors carry more weight than facts, reputation becomes a form of power in itself. Buggy's connection to legendary figures is undeniable and well documented. He sailed with Gol D, the Pirate King himself. This fact alone carries immense weight. In the world of One Piece, being part of Roger's crew means you witnessed the conquest of the Grand Line, stood beside the man who reached Laugh Tale, and learned from the greatest pirate who ever lived. Every member of the Roger Pirates is treated with reverence, even decades after the crew disbanded. When people learn that Buggy served under Roger, they make certain assumptions. They assume he must have learned powerful techniques from Roger and Rayleigh. They assume he witnessed secret histories and gained knowledge that ordinary pirates could never access. They assume Roger wouldn't have kept someone weak on his crew during the most dangerous voyage in pirate history. All these assumptions are reasonable, and all of them contribute to Buggy's mystique. His relationship with Shanks adds another layer to this reputation. Shanks is one of the 4 emperors, a man whose conqueror's haki is so powerful it can physically damage objects. When Whitebeard mentioned that Buggy and Shanks were together constantly during their youth, when the Marines noted their brotherly connection, people drew conclusions. If Shanks and Buggy were equals as children, if they trained together under Roger and Rayleigh, then surely Buggy must also possess incredible power, even if he hasn't displayed it openly. The fact that Buggy has chosen not to demonstrate his true strength only enhances this perception. In a world of flashy displays and constant power scaling, Buggy's apparent restraint seems strategic rather than cowardly. He must be hiding his abilities, waiting for the right moment to reveal his true potential. This assumption is reinforced every time Buggy survives something that should have killed him. At Marineford, the greatest war in recent history, Buggy wandered through the battlefield and emerged without a scratch. He stood beside Shanks and spoke to him casually, without fear. He gave speeches that inspired prisoners to follow him into battle against the Marines. From the outside, this behavior suggested someone with either enormous power or complete confidence in their ability to survive. The idea that it was actually just luck and cowardice never occurred to most observers. Similarly, when Buggy formed the Cross Guild, and the world believed he had convinced Crocodile and Mihawk to serve under him, the logical conclusion was that Buggy possessed the strength to command such powerful subordinates. After all, Crocodile was a former warlord with a Logia devil fruit and decades of experience in the New World's political games. Mihawk was the world's strongest swordsman, a man who could duel Shanks himself. If both of these legends were following Buggy's orders, he must be even more formidable than either of them. This creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Buggy's reputation attracts powerful followers who believe in his legend. Those followers accomplish impressive feats while serving under Buggy, which further enhances his reputation. That enhanced reputation attracts even more followers, and the cycle continues. The fact that Buggy is actually terrified and has no control over any of this is irrelevant to everyone watching from the outside. There's also the charisma factor that cannot be ignored. Buggy is not physically strong, but he possesses a natural magnetism that draws people to him. This quality, which Mihawk called the most dangerous ability in the world when referring to Luffy, is something Buggy shares. People want to follow Buggy, even when logic says they shouldn't. The prisoners in Impel Down could have followed any of the stronger pirates during the escape, but they chose Buggy. His crew remains fanatically loyal despite knowing he's weak. Even knowing the truth, people are drawn into his orbit. The world government's response to Buggy has only validated his reputation in the eyes of the world. When they made him a warlord, it signaled that they considered him a significant threat or asset. When they raised his bounty to over 3 billion berries, it confirmed that they viewed him as one of the most dangerous pirates alive. And when they designated him an emperor, they officially placed him among the 4 most powerful individuals in the pirate world. Every official action the government takes reinforces the perception that Buggy is far more dangerous than he appears. And in a world where perception shapes reality, where reputation can be more valuable than actual strength, Buggy has become exactly what everyone believes him to be: a legend, a threat, and a pirate worthy of standing among the greatest in the world. The irony is that Buggy is painfully aware that he doesn't deserve any of this. He knows he's weak. He knows he's a coward. He knows that Crocodile could kill him instantly if he felt like it, that Mihawk's blade could end him with a casual swing. But everyone else has built such an elaborate mythology around him that the truth no longer matters. The legend of Buggy the Clown has taken on a life of its own, and Buggy is trapped inside it, unable to escape the reputation he never wanted and doesn't deserve. As One Piece enters its final saga, Buggy finds himself in a position he never sought and barely understands. He is an emperor of the sea, one of 4 pirates who stand at the pinnacle of the pirate world. His organization, the Cross Guild, is actively challenging the world government by placing bounties on Marines. His name is spoken in the same breath as Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shanks, and he has publicly declared his intention to find the One Piece, setting himself up as a competitor in the final race for the ultimate treasure. The question that fascinates fans and characters within the story is, what will happen to Buggy in the end? Will he maintain his position through continued luck and misunderstanding? Will his followers finally discover that their legendary captain is actually weak and cowardly? Or will something unexpected happen that transforms Buggy into the powerful pirate everyone believes him to be? One possibility that has captured the imagination of Hini involves the potential awakening of Buggy's devil fruit. In the world of One Piece, powerful devil fruit users can eventually awaken their abilities, unlocking a deeper level of power that transcends the fruit's basic properties. When Paramecia users awaken their fruits, they typically gain the ability to extend their power beyond their own bodies, affecting the environment around them. If this pattern holds for Buggy, an awakened Bara Bara no Mi could allow him to split anything he touches, not just his own body. Some have speculated this might give him the power to split entire land masses, buildings, or weapons with a touch, turning his defensive power into a devastating offensive ability. Others have proposed even more extreme possibilities, though these remain firmly in the realm of fan theory rather than confirmed lore. There's also been fascinating speculation among some fans that suggests Buggy's devil fruit might not actually be the Bara Bara no Mi at all, but rather something entirely different related to luck itself. This theory attempts to explain Buggy's impossible survival rate and the way fortune seems to bend in his favor at crucial moments. However, this remains purely speculative, with no canonical support in the actual story. What we know for certain is that Buggy consumed the Bara Bara no Mi, and its splitting powers have been consistently demonstrated throughout the series. Whether any of these speculative theories prove accurate remains to be seen. What is certain is that Eiichiro Oda, One Piece's creator, has plans for Buggy. Oda has consistently used Buggy as more than just comic relief. Every major arc features Buggy in some capacity, and his role in the story has gradually expanded rather than diminished. A character who has been present since the beginning of the series, who has connections to nearly every major event and figure, doesn't reach Emperor status without Oda having specific narrative intentions, regardless of how the story frames his rise. Buggy's relationship with the other emperors will likely play a significant role in the final saga. Luffy views Buggy as a minor annoyance at best, someone who occasionally crosses his path but isn't worth taking seriously. This dismissive attitude could be a mistake. Blackbeard is aware of Buggy's history with the Roger Pirates and may see him as either a valuable source of information or a threat to be eliminated. And Shanks, the one person who knows Buggy better than anyone, has never explained why he stayed behind when Buggy was sick, why he maintains contact despite their complicated history, or what he truly thinks of Buggy's current position. The Cross Guild itself represents a powder keg waiting to explode. Crocodile is not a patient man, and having to maintain the fiction that Buggy is his superior clearly grates on him. Mihawk seems mostly indifferent, content to go along with the arrangement as long as he's left alone. But even his patience has limits. At some point, something will have to give. Either Buggy will find a way to actually earn his position, or the truth will come out in a way that destroys the carefully constructed myth surrounding him. There's also the matter of Buggy's declaration to seek the One Piece. While Crocodile and Mihawk were furious about this announcement, Buggy's followers saw it as confirmation of their captain's greatness. The speech revealed something important about Buggy's character. Despite his cowardice and his pragmatism, despite spending decades avoiding danger and pursuing easy treasure, some part of him never stopped dreaming about following in Roger's footsteps. Some part of him still remembers the boy who sailed the Grand Line on the Oro Jackson, who witnessed the Pirate King's journey, who once believed he could be something great. This internal conflict between the coward Buggy has become and the dreamer he once was may be the key to his character's resolution. Every moment of accidental heroism, every time Buggy survives impossible odds, every instance where he inspires loyalty despite his weakness, suggests that there's more to him than even he realizes. Perhaps Roger saw something in that argumentative child all those years ago. Perhaps there's a reason fate keeps pushing Buggy toward greatness, even as he desperately tries to run away from it. As we reach the end of Buggy's story so far, we're left with a character who embodies one of One Piece's most important themes. That destiny is not solely determined by strength, that dreams can manifest in unexpected ways, and that sometimes the most unlikely people end up changing the world. Buggy never wanted to be an emperor. He wanted to find treasure, live comfortably, and avoid dangerous situations. Yet, through a combination of impossible luck, strategic cowardice, and the perceptions of everyone around him, he achieved a status that even the strongest pirates struggled to attain. He stands among legends despite being weaker than most of them. He commands loyalty despite being a terrible leader. He inspires fear despite being fundamentally afraid of everything. His journey from apprentice on the Pirate King's ship to Emperor of the Sea is one of the most absurd arcs in all of One Piece. Yet it's also strangely inspiring. Buggy proves that you don't have to be the strongest to survive in a world of monsters. You don't have to be brave to influence the course of history. You don't have to be wise to gather followers who believe in your vision. Sometimes, just surviving one more day, just keeping your head above water, just refusing to give up even when logic says you should, is enough. There's something almost heroic about Buggy's cowardice. He knows he's outmatched. He knows he doesn't belong among emperors and legends. He knows that at any moment, someone stronger could come along and destroy everything he's built. Yet, he keeps going, keeps surviving, keeps stumbling forward into whatever absurd situation fate throws at him next. His relationships define him more than his power ever could. His lifelong grudge against Shanks over a devil fruit eaten by accident. His terror of Crocodile and Mihawk, even as the world believes he commands them. His genuine affection for his crew, even if he'd never admit it. His connection to the Roger Pirates. A bond he downplayed for decades, but which ultimately shaped his entire destiny. These relationships are what make Buggy more than just a comedic character. They ground him in the story's emotional reality, making him feel real despite the absurdity of his situation. The prisoners who followed him out of Impel Down saw something in Buggy that he doesn't see in himself. They believed he was worthy of following, worthy of serving, worthy of dying for. Whether they were right or wrong. Whether Buggy deserves their faith or not, the fact remains that he inspired them. He gave them hope in the darkest prison in the world. He led them to freedom when no one else could. That counts for something, even if it was all accidental. Perhaps, in the end, Buggy's greatest treasure won't be gold or jewels or the One Piece itself. Perhaps it will be the realization that he became something more than he ever thought possible. That the boy who argued with Shanks on the deck of the Oro Jackson grew into a man whose name is known throughout the world, whose flag flies alongside those of legends, whose story will be told long after he's gone. The night sky stretches above the ocean, vast and filled with stars. Somewhere beneath those stars, the Cross Guild's ship sails onward, carrying 3 unlikely allies toward an uncertain future. In his quarters, Buggy probably lies awake, terrified of tomorrow, wondering how he'll survive the next crisis, planning his next escape route. He doesn't know that he's already survived impossible odds 100 times. He doesn't understand that his legacy is already secure, that he's already changed the world in ways he can't imagine. And perhaps that's fitting. Perhaps the greatest trick Buggy ever pulled was convincing everyone, including himself, that he was just a clown, just a coward, just a lucky fool who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Perhaps the truth is something else entirely, something that will only be revealed when the story reaches its final chapter and all the masks fall away. Until then, Buggy the Clown Emperor of the Sea, continues his journey. He stumbles forward into legend, one terrified step at a time, accidentally inspiring millions, accidentally threatening the world government, accidentally pursuing the greatest treasure in the world. He is absurd and magnificent, cowardly and somehow brave, weak and yet stronger than he knows. In the grand story of One Piece, where dreams and willpower shape reality, where the impossible becomes possible through sheer determination, Buggy represents something unique. He is the dreamer who stopped dreaming but couldn't escape his destiny. He is the coward who inspires courage in others. He is the weak pirate who stands among the strong. He is, against all logic and reason, exactly where he was always meant to be. Let your thoughts drift now, like ships on a calm sea. Let the story of the clown who became a king settle in your mind like treasure, sinking slowly through dark water. The Grand Line stretches endless beneath the stars, and somewhere on those waters, Buggy sails onward toward whatever absurd fate awaits him. His story is not finished. His legend continues to grow, and the boy who once sailed with Roger carries that legacy forward, whether he wants to or not, into the final chapters of the greatest adventure the world has ever known. Rest now. Let the rhythm of waves against a ship's hull lull you into peace. Let the image of a red-nosed clown standing defiant in his terror, facing impossible odds with nothing but luck and circumstance on his side, fade gently into dreams. The world of One Piece continues without you, its characters living their strange and wonderful lives, its mysteries slowly unfolding toward answers that will change everything. Buggy's journey is a reminder that even in a world of gods and monsters, even in a story of legendary warriors and supernatural powers, there's room for the unexpected. There's space for the underdog, the fortunate fool, the reluctant hero who never wanted heroism. His story proves that you don't need to be strong to matter. You just need to keep going, keep surviving, keep existing in a world that constantly tries to erase you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, if fate smiles upon you in its strange and inscrutable way, you might just stumble into greatness. You might become something you never imagined, achieve things you never sought, inspire people you never meant to touch. You might become a legend despite yourself, a king despite your cowardice, an emperor despite everything that says you shouldn't be. That is the story of Buggy the Clown. That is the tale of the boy from the Roger Pirates who became one of the 4 emperors. That is the legend of the red-nosed pirate who conquered the world by accident, one hilarious disaster at a time. Sleep well. Dream of treasure and adventure, of ships sailing under starlight, of legends being born from the most unlikely sources. Dream of a clown's face painted against the darkness, grinning despite the fear, laughing despite the odds, existing triumphantly in defiance of every logical outcome. Dream of Buggy, the impossible emperor, the accidental king, the coward who couldn't help but become legendary. And if you enjoyed this journey through his story, through the absurd and magnificent tale of how a weak pirate became one of the strongest names in the world, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more restful explorations of the stories we love. Your support helps these calm adventures reach others who seek peace in the narratives that shape our imagination. But for now, all you need to do is rest. The story is told. The legend is complete for this moment. And somewhere in the world of One Piece, Buggy continues to sail forward, continues to survive, continues to exist as living proof that in a world of dreams and willpower, anything, no matter how absurd, is possible. Good night.